crackle of pine in the stove, warmth on the knuckles, and that old ache in the left knee that always comes back when winter wants to remind a man who he used to be. Brothers, peace is a nice story, people tell themselves. Leaving the battlefield does not mean the fight ends. Sometimes the silence is worse than the gunfire, because silence lets monsters walk right up to the door without a sound. I bought a cheap place in Buffalo to find a safe zone. Then my service dog, Scout, froze at the gate, and I saw a woman hanging in the snow, wrists bound, still breathing by a thread. So tell me, brotherhood, when the wall closes in, does a man run or does a man hold the line? Because the men who tried to erase Hannah were already circling back. The help on her phone was a trap, and the waterfront was waiting. Sit down, listen close. This one is about survival and becoming a protector again. Lake effect snow drifted across Buffalo like quiet ash. The wind off Lake Erie cut through coats and thoughts. Streetlights blurred in white. Even the city sounded muted, as if holding its breath. Ethan Cole kept both hands on the steering wheel until his knuckles ached. Not from fear, from habit, the kind that stays after war. After injuries, after the part of life where a person learns to measure rooms and exits without trying. He was about 40, tall and broad-shouldered, built like someone who once carried too much and never fully put it down. His face was sharp-edged, jaw square, nose straight, forehead slightly high. A trimmed beard framed the lines around his mouth. A few gray hairs threaded his temples. More stubborn than his pride, his dark brown eyes looked warm in normal light. But when he focused, they turned hard and narrow. His left knee reminded him of itself with every press of the brake. He adjusted his leg. Careful, controlled. He hated attention, hated sympathy, hated people who mistook quiet for weakness. What he hated most was unfairness. The kind that showed up in clean words and left mess behind. The truck rolled past a row of tired houses near the Canal District, then turned toward a smaller street where the snowdrifts piled higher. The cheap house sat at the end, fenced and half forgotten, as if it had been waiting for someone who did not ask questions. Ethan did not ask questions. Not out loud. Scout sat upright in the passenger seat, calm and still. A 5-year-old German shepherd, black and tan coat clean against the gray day. Ears up, amber brown eyes steady. Scout did not pant. Scout did not whine. Scout watched. A black harness lay snug across Scout's chest, the patch clear even in the dim light. Service dog. Do not pet. Ethan parked and shut off the engine. The silence after the motor died felt too complete. He stayed in place for one extra beat, letting his eyes sweep the street. No movement. No headlights idling. No footsteps where there should not be footsteps. Scout's head tilted once, then returned forward. That was enough. Ethan stepped out. Navy winter parka, thigh length, zipped up against the wind, red and black plaid flannel beneath it. Faded jeans, brown leather boots that gripped the ice better than anything else he owned. He moved with a slight stiffness, more in the left leg than the right, and he resented it every time. The property gate was old iron, bent at the top. A chain hung loose, as if someone had decided locks were unnecessary here. Ethan's hand hovered near his pocket, not for a weapon, just for the comfort of having something to do with his fingers. Scout jumped down, landing quietly. No excitement, no pulling. He took 2 steps, then stopped so sharply that his body went rigid. Ethan followed Scout's line of sight and felt his stomach tighten. "What is it?" Ethan asked. Low. Scout did not look back. Scout's ears stayed high, his tail lowered. His posture was not fear. It was recognition. Ethan walked forward, boots crunching. The wind pushed snow in thin sheets across the driveway. He saw the shape near the gate and, for a moment, his brain refused to label it. A woman hung from a beam under the entry arch. Her body sagged slightly. Winter coat stiff with frost. Boots dusted white. Her arms were pulled behind her. Rope. The kind of rope that bites skin raw. Her dark hair clung to her face in frozen strands. Ethan's chest went tight. Like the air had been taken, he did not think about why. He did not think about who. He moved. Scout gave one short bark. sharp and controlled, then circled beneath the arch, nose lifting to scent the air, not frantic, focused. Ethan reached the woman. The rope was crusted with ice. His fingers went numb the second he touched it. He drew a small blade from his pocket, the movement smooth and practiced. His left knee protested when he shifted his weight, but he ignored it. He cut. The rope resisted, then gave. The woman dropped into his arms like someone whose body had run out of argument. She was lighter than she should have been, too still, too cold. "Stay with me," Ethan said. Not loud, not gentle either. Steady. He lowered her to the snow, checked her throat for a pulse. There, faint, but present. He leaned close to her mouth and counted breaths, thin and uneven. Her lips were blue. Her skin was pale in a way that did not belong to living people. Scout pressed close to her side, laying his body against hers, sharing heat without being told. His amber eyes flicked between her face and Ethan's hands. He did not bark again. Ethan's mind tried to split into two. One side wanted to run through options like a checklist. Call for help. Carry her inside. Check for injuries. Stop bleeding if there was bleeding. The other side felt something older, sharper. This was not an accident. Not in a city, not in a yard. Not in plain sight and still hidden by snow. He shrugged off his navy parka and wrapped it around her shoulders. The flannel beneath caught the wind and snapped once, like a small flag. He knelt, cut the bindings at her wrists. The rope left swollen red marks, angry and raw. Her fingers curled inward, as if trying to hold on to warmth that was gone. Ethan slid one arm under her knees and the other behind her back. He lifted carefully, mindful of his knee. Pain flashed up his leg. He swallowed it. Pain was a price, and he was used to paying. Scout moved ahead, checking corners, pausing at the door like he was mapping the room before Ethan entered it. Ethan got the woman inside, shut the door, and locked it without thinking. The house was cold, stale, smelling of old wood and neglect. Ethan got her to the living room floor near a small fireplace that looked like it had not been used in years. He struck a match, fed kindling, coaxed flame from unwilling wood. The fire caught in a low, shaky line. He laid her near the heat, then rubbed her hands between his own. His hands were warm from work, scarred and rough. He pressed warmth into her skin, as if he could force her body to remember how to live. Her eyelids fluttered once. Then again, Scout sat beside her, close enough to touch, not crowding, not leaving. His ears twitched at the house sounds, the settling boards, the wind, the distant hush of traffic. The woman's eyes opened a sliver, hazel, rimmed with green. Fear surfaced fast, even through exhaustion. She tried to speak, but her throat barely moved. Ethan kept his face in her line of sight, careful not to loom. "You're inside," he said. "You're alive." Her gaze shifted to Scout. She stared at the harness patch, then at the dog's steady eyes. Something in her expression loosened, just a fraction. Her lips trembled. A whisper finally came out, thin as smoke. "Hannah." Ethan nodded once, like a promise he could actually keep. "Hannah," he repeated. "I'm Ethan. You're safe for the moment." Scout lowered his head near her shoulder, as if agreeing without sound. Outside, snow dragged against the windows like a warning. Inside, Ethan felt the truth settle in his bones. People did not end up hanging in winter by mistake, and now, whether he wanted it or not, he was part of whatever had done this to her. Snow kept falling in slow, stubborn layers. The wind pressed against the windows like it wanted inside. The fire in the hearth was small, but it made the room feel less like a tomb. Ethan stayed near the fireplace, one knee down, one foot planted, the posture of a man who never fully relaxed. The red and black flannel showed beneath his navy parka when he shifted. He had not bothered to change. He did not own many comforts, and he trusted routine more than warmth. Scout lay beside Hannah, his black and tan body stretched close enough to share heat. The harness patch service dog, "Do not pet," caught the firelight every time the flames moved. Scout's ears twitched at the house sounds, but his breathing stayed even. He was calm in the way a trained animal is calm, not because danger is gone, Because danger is expected. Hannah's eyes opened again, wider this time, hazel with a green ring that made them look awake even when her face was drained. Her lips were cracked. Her breath stuttered, like it was learning its own rhythm. Ethan kept his voice low. Don't try to sit up fast. She tried anyway. Pride did that. Panic did that. Her shoulders tensed, and a sharp wince crossed her face when her wrists moved. Ethan didn't reach for her. He offered distance first. Rope burn, he said. You're going to feel it. Hannah swallowed. Her throat worked painfully. Where? My house, Ethan said, then corrected himself because he didn't like claiming things. The place I bought. You're safe for the moment. For the moment? He chose those words on purpose. He could not promise safety like a gift. Safety had to be earned and defended, and he didn't know what was coming through the snow. Hannah's gaze shifted to Scout. She stared at the harness patch, then at the dog's steady eyes. The fear in her face softened by a single degree, as if she trusted training more than strangers. Scout didn't move toward her. He stayed still, but his tail tapped the floor once. Slow and controlled, a quiet greeting, a signal. Hannah's voice came out thin. He's yours. He's my service dog, Ethan said. He didn't add the details. Those were private, and he was tired of explaining himself. Scout, Hannah tried to lift a hand. Her fingers shook. Scout leaned in just enough to meet her touch without pressing. She flinched at first, then let her palm rest against the warmth of his fur. Ethan watched it happen and felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Not joy, not relief, something closer to recognition. People always talked about trust like it was a speech. Ethan had learned it was quieter. It lived in small choices. A hand resting on a dog instead of reaching for the door. A breath taken when it would be easier to break. Hannah looked back at Ethan. I said my name, she whispered. Hannah. I heard you, Ethan said. Hannah Price. Her eyes tightened. How do you? Ethan pointed with his chin toward her coat, bunched near the fireplace. A wallet had slipped from an inner pocket when he'd cut her down. He hadn't opened it until he needed something to tell emergency services who she was. The ID had been right there. Hannah's gaze flicked away. Right? Silence filled the room again. But it was different now. Less empty. More loaded. The kind of silence where two strangers decide what they are willing to share. Ethan reached into a cupboard and pulled out a clean dish towel. He soaked a corner in warm water and brought it to her slowly, letting her see his hands. Your face, he said. Ice will crack the skin. Hannah hesitated. Pride again. Then she nodded once and let him dab the towel along her cheekbone and jaw. Up close, Ethan saw faint freckles under the pale wash of cold. He saw the bruise blooming near her hairline, half hidden beneath dark strands. His jaw tightened. He kept his hands steady. Do you remember what happened? He asked. Hannah's eyes went distant. Her breath caught. She did not answer right away, and Ethan didn't push. He'd seen that look in mirrors, memory approaching like a wave. I didn't fall, she said finally. Her voice stayed soft, but the firmness under it was real. They staged it. Ethan nodded once. I figured. Hannah's gaze sharpened. You're not surprised. I've been surprised before, Ethan said. It doesn't help. A sound like a laugh tried to form in her throat and failed. It came out as a rough exhale instead. That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be, he said. And for the first time, his mouth shifted slightly. Almost a smile. Almost. Scout lifted his head and looked toward the front of the house. Ethan felt it too, not a sound. Exactly. More like a change in pressure. The way the air turns when something moves outside. He stood, careful on his left knee. His boots made no more noise than they had to. He crossed the room and stopped by the window without stepping into the center. A habit. A rule. Headlights slid through the falling snow at the end of the street. Slow and deliberate. Not a car passing. A car searching. Ethan stayed still until the lights moved on. He exhaled through his nose. Controlled. Then he turned back to Hannah and kept his face neutral, as if nothing had happened. Hannah had seen the shift in him anyway. Someone's looking for me, she said. Yes, Ethan replied. Hannah's fingers curled against the blanket. I work for a housing support office in Buffalo, she said, forcing her voice into steadiness. We help families with evictions, debt, paperwork people don't understand. I thought I was just doing my job. Ethan listened without interrupting. I found records that didn't match. Hannah continued. Homes taken too fast. Owners pushed out. And the paperwork cleaned up like it was nothing. Names that showed up where they shouldn't. I asked questions, politely. I thought it was a mistake. Her eyes met his. It wasn't. Ethan felt the old anger rise, slow and cold. The kind that didn't burn hot. The kind that settled into the bones and waited. Harbor Line, Hannah said, tasting the word like it was bitter. That redevelopment project everyone smiles about. Revitalizing the waterfront. Ethan didn't know the details, but he knew the shape. Big plans, small people crushed under them, violence hidden behind committees and clean coats. Hannah's voice shook once and then steadied again. They didn't want to kill me loudly. They wanted Winter to do it quietly. Scout shifted closer to her hip, his body a warm wall. Hannah's hand found his fur again. For a second, her mouth softened. He's kind of intense, she murmured. Ethan huffed a small breath. He thinks the bathroom is a high-risk area. Hannah blinked. What? Ethan nodded toward the hallway. Scout's gaze followed it like a checkpoint. When you get up later, Ethan said, he'll probably sit outside the door. It's not personal. It's policy. A real laugh escaped Hannah then. Small and surprised, it hurt her throat, but it was a laugh all the same. The sound made the room feel warmer than the fire did. Ethan watched her and felt something shift again. Subtle, he didn't like it. He didn't trust it. Hope was dangerous. It made a person careless. Hannah's expression changed. Laughter fading into caution. I had proof, she said quietly. Copies. I hid something. I don't remember where. I was running. They grabbed me. Everything after that is snow and rope. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Sharp now. If you had proof, they'll come back. Hannah nodded. I know. Scout stood. Ears up, body angled toward the front door. Not barking, not lunging, just listening with his whole frame. Ethan didn't look away from Hannah when he spoke. You need rest, he said. But we're not pretending this is over. Outside, the wind dragged across the roof. The fire popped softly, and in the quiet between those sounds, Ethan understood the part he hadn't said out loud yet. He had come to Buffalo to disappear. Instead, he had found a woman the world had tried to erase. And now, because he had cut that rope, the people who wanted her gone would eventually return to finish what Winter started. Morning arrived in Buffalo without brightness. Snow kept falling, softer now, as if the night had spent itself. The sky was a lid of gray, and the world looked newly erased. Ethan was awake before the fire had fully died. He sat in a chair facing the front windows, navy winter parka still on his shoulders, red and black flannel visible at the collar and cuffs. His boots stayed laced. His left knee throbbed in a slow pulse that felt like a warning he couldn't turn off. Scout stood at the doorway between the living room and the hall, body angled so he could see both Ethan and Hannah at once. The black harness hugged his chest, the patch plain and uncompromising. Service dog. Do not pet. He wasn't barking. He wasn't pacing. He was doing what he had been trained to do, hold a line and watch for what other eyes missed. Hannah slept in short fragments, wrapped in blankets on the rug near the fireplace. In the dim daylight, color had returned to her cheeks by a fraction, not enough to look well, enough to look alive. Ethan kept catching himself staring at her hands, the angry red rings around her wrists. Every time he saw them, something hard settled deeper behind his eyes. He told himself he was thinking tactically. He told himself he was calculating risk, routes, timing. He did not tell himself the other truth. Saving her had changed the shape of his life overnight. He had come here to vanish, to let the world forget his name the way he had begun to forget it himself. Instead, he had been given a reason to stand in place. Hannah stirred and winced as she shifted. Her hazel eyes opened, focused faster than they had the night before. She looked at Ethan like she was measuring him and the room at the same time. You didn't sleep, she said. Ethan shrugged. A small movement. Enough! Hannah pushed herself up with care, protecting her wrists. I remembered something, she said. and her voice came out steadier than it had any right to. Ethan leaned forward. Talk. She licked dry lips. I hid a copy. Not here. Before they grabbed me, I ran past a diner near the canal. There's a broken jukebox by the back wall. I shoved a waterproof envelope behind the panel. I did it because I didn't know where else to put it. Ethan's mind clicked into place with the relief of a plan. You're sure? Hannah nodded once, then hesitated, as sure as someone can be after getting dragged through snow. Ethan stood. Pain cut through his left knee and up his thigh. He didn't react except for a tightening at the jaw. We go now, he said. While it's daylight. Hannah stared at him. You're taking me out there. You're already out there, Ethan replied. The only difference is whether we pretend. Scout stepped forward, ears lifting, as if the decision had been waiting for him too. Ethan moved through the kitchen and found an old scarf and a pair of gloves that still had tags on them, left by someone who had once planned to stay warm here. He brought them back and set them beside Hannah. Put these on, he said. You're not ready for cold. Hannah's expression softened, then hardened again in the same breath. You don't know me, she said, but she pulled the gloves on anyway. I know enough, Ethan answered. He guided her toward the front door, keeping his body between her and the windows. A habit, a promise. Scout went first, stepping out, scanning the yard, then sitting still for a beat. No threats, just snow and silence. They drove with the heater low so it wouldn't fog the windows. Ethan kept the truck's interior dark. Scout sat in the back now, harness patch visible as he watched the passing streets with a focus that didn't flicker. Buffalo looked different in daylight, less haunted, more honest. Old brick buildings, shuttered storefronts, winter-bent trees. The canal district was quiet, the water edges thick with ice. Snow mounded along curbs like small barricades. Ethan parked a block away from the diner. He didn't pull into the lot. He didn't want his truck seen where it didn't belong. He checked the street twice, then helped Hannah down carefully. She moved with stubborn control, hiding her pain behind posture. The diner sign read Mabel's in faded letters. The windows were fogged from heat and coffee. A bell over the door jingled when they entered. Thin and bright, warmth hit them like a wave. Hannah swayed slightly. Ethan steadied her with a hand at her elbow. Brief and professional. Scout walked in beside them, calm, harness patch immediately catching attention. The room went quiet in that way diners do when a stranger brings winter in with him. Then it resumed, slower. Behind the counter stood a woman in her early 60s, short and sturdy, with cropped silver hair and sharp eyes that looked like they'd measured 1,000 lies. Her face wasn't kind, but it wasn't cruel either. It was practical. She wiped her hands on her apron and watched Ethan without blinking. Kitchen's open, she said. Coffee's fresh. Don't track too much snow. Ethan nodded. We're not here to eat. That made her eyes narrow. Then you're here to make trouble. Hannah's shoulders stiffened. Ethan spoke first, calm and respectful. My name's Ethan. This is Hannah. We need something that was left here. The woman studied Hannah, then the raw marks on her wrists that the gloves didn't fully hide. She didn't react with shock. She reacted with understanding. Which was worse. Donna Keller, she said, as if names mattered when the world was unstable. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were alert. You're freezing. Sit. Hannah started to refuse. Donna cut her off with a look. Sit, she repeated. And it wasn't a request. It was the kind of order people obey when they're too tired to argue. Hannah slid into a booth. Ethan stayed standing, blocking the view from the front windows. Scout sat at Ethan's left side, perfectly positioned, head turning in small degrees as he tracked movement. Donna poured coffee without asking and set it down in front of Hannah. Sugar's on the table, she said. Drink it black if you're serious. Hannah let out a small breath that could have been laughter. I'm serious. Good, Donna replied. Then her gaze slid back to Ethan. What did you lose? Ethan didn't like telling stories. He liked facts. An envelope, he said. Waterproof. Behind the jukebox, Donna's mouth tightened as if she was chewing on a memory. That jukebox hasn't worked since Clinton, she muttered. Why would you hide something there? Hannah's hands shook slightly as she wrapped them around the mug. Because I didn't have time, she said. Because someone was following me. Donna leaned forward, elbows on the counter, up close. Ethan saw faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the kind that came from watching people walk into storms and pretend it was fine. Honey, Donna said to Hannah, and the softness in that word surprised Ethan. If someone followed you here, they might follow you back out. Ethan's eyes sharpened. We won't stay long. Scout stood suddenly, ears forward, not barking, just rising like a switch had been flipped. Ethan felt it too, the shift in the room, the subtle pause in conversation. He turned his head slightly toward the front windows without moving his feet. A man had entered. He was in his mid-40s, solid build, dark coat, gloves neat, hair cut short like he respected order. He looked like someone who could pass for anyone in a crowd. That was the problem. His eyes were too calm. His smile was too polite. He paused near the doorway as if he'd simply come for coffee. Then his gaze landed on Hannah. Hannah went still. The color drained from her face. Donna's hand tightened around her coffee pot. We're full, she said flatly, even though there were open booths. The man smiled wider. I'll stand, he replied. His voice was smooth, controlled. Name's Trent. Ethan didn't introduce himself. He didn't offer a handshake. He just shifted his weight, putting more of his body between Trent and Hannah. Scout's amber eyes locked on Trent. No growl, no bark. Just a stare that made the air feel narrower. Trent's gaze flicked to the harness patch. His smile thinned. Service dog, he said, like he was reading a warning label. Then he looked back at Ethan. You should be careful who you help. Buffalo winters are rough. Ethan's voice stayed level. So are some people. A quiet beat passed. In that beat, Ethan understood something with a clarity that felt like ice. This man didn't need to shout. He didn't need to threaten. He was here to confirm. Trent's eyes moved toward the back wall where the broken jukebox sat. Just a glance. Quick, but it was enough. Ethan felt his pulse steady into something colder. Trent nodded once. Polite again. Enjoy your coffee, he said to no one in particular, then turned and walked out. Bell jingling behind him like a cheap joke. Donna exhaled slowly. That, she said, voice low, is not a man who came in for breakfast. Hannah's hands trembled around the mug. Ethan didn't touch her. He didn't reassure her with words he couldn't guarantee. He only said, show me the jukebox. And Scout, already moving, led the way. By dusk, the snow turned mean again. Wind off Lake Erie shoved it sideways, sanding the streets white. The sky sank low, and Buffalo's lights looked like they were drowning. Ethan didn't like the quiet that came after leaving Mabel's. It wasn't peaceful quiet. It was the kind that waited. He drove with his shoulders loose and his grip steady. Navy winter parka still on, the red and black flannel showing at his throat, faded jeans, brown leather boots. Everything about him looked ordinary until you watched how he moved, how his eyes measured corners, how his left knee made him choose each step with care. Scout rode in back, upright and silent, the black harness snug against his chest. The patch service dog, do not pet, caught the passing streetlight like a warning sign no one should ignore. His amber eyes tracked the world through the windows as if snow could carry footsteps. Hannah sat rigid in the passenger seat, gloved hands folded tight in her lap. The coffee had brought a little color back to her face, but fear still lived in the set of her mouth. She kept glancing at Ethan like she was trying to understand what kind of man stayed calm when a threat smiled at him across a diner floor. You saw him look at the jukebox, she said. Ethan nodded once. He knows. Hannah's breath hitched. Then we don't have time. We never did, Ethan replied. Back at the house. Ethan didn't pull straight into the drive. He circled once. Slow, scanning. No fresh tracks near the fence. No car idling nearby. No shadow behind the neighbor's porch light. Snow can hide evidence, but it can't hide instinct. He parked and ushered Hannah inside without rushing her. Scout went first, checked the corners, then held at the threshold while Ethan locked the door. The fire was still there, low and stubborn. Ethan added wood. The flames flared, throwing light up the cracked walls. For a few minutes, the room felt almost normal. Almost. Hannah stood near the hearth, fingers spread toward the heat. She looked smaller indoors, not because she was fragile, but because the cold had taken a piece of her strength and refused to give it back yet. Ethan watched her wrists again, those raw rings under the glove cuffs, and felt the same cold anger settle behind his eyes. "I need to call someone," Hannah said quietly. "Not the police. Not yet. Someone inside the city office. Someone who can move paperwork without making it a spectacle." Ethan didn't like the word someone. "Name," he said. Hannah hesitated, then forced it out. "Mike Dorsey." The name meant nothing to Ethan, but Hannah's tone did. It carried trust that had been built over months, maybe years, the kind of trust that could break a person when it shattered. "He's a city housing liaison," Hannah added, as if that explained why she needed him. Mid-30s, always looks tired, talks fast when he's nervous, but he's helped families before. He said if anything happened, I should call. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "And you believe him?" Hannah's jaw tightened. "I did." Scout's ears twitched at the word did. Hannah pulled her phone from her pocket. Her thumb hovered over the screen like it weighed too much. She stepped into the hallway for privacy, then stopped, catching herself. "You want me where you can see me," she said, not accusing, just noticing. "Yes," Ethan answered. Hannah made the call anyway. Ethan didn't listen to the details. He watched the windows, watched Scout's posture, watched the way the firelight jumped on the floor. He heard Hannah's voice turn careful, then clipped. He heard her say, "I'm alive," like it was a fact she had to defend. Then she went quiet. When she came back into the living room, her face had changed. The calm was still there, but it was the calm of a person who has just realized the room is smaller than she thought. "He said he can meet," Hannah whispered. "Tonight." Ethan felt something in his chest tighten. "Where?" Hannah swallowed. "Near the waterfront. There's a construction site." He said it's private. "No cameras." He said it's safer. Safer. That word didn't belong in a sentence with no cameras. Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He only watched Hannah's eyes and saw the conflict there. Hope, wrestling fear, both losing. Before he could speak again, Scout stood, not suddenly, not explosively, just up, ears forward, body angled toward the back of the house. Ethan's hand went still on the log he'd been about to place in the fire. A sound came from somewhere deeper in the building, not a loud crash, a soft scrape, the kind of noise a careful person makes when they think careful means invisible. Scout didn't bark. He didn't need to. His whole body became a warning. Ethan moved. Navy parka open now, flannel visible. He crossed the room with the economy of someone saving time for the moment that mattered. He signaled Scout with 2 fingers. "Stay." Scout held, eyes locked toward the hallway. Ethan reached the kitchen and saw it at once. A window latch was bent. Snow had been brushed from the sill, leaving a smear that looked like a handprint. They had been inside. He turned back toward the living room, and Hannah was no longer by the hearth. For a heartbeat, Ethan's mind refused it. Then he heard a muffled gasp, the shuffle of boots, the thud of a shoulder against a wall. He ran. His left knee flared with pain as he rounded the corner, but he didn't slow. He caught the last glimpse of Hannah's coat disappearing through the back door. Pulled by a man in a dark jacket, another shadow moved behind them. Quick and practiced, Scout surged forward, finally breaking his silence with one sharp bark controlled, not frantic, and lunged toward the doorway. Ethan grabbed the leash handle attached to Scout's harness and moved with him, not fighting the dog's momentum, using it outside. The wind slapped Ethan's face raw. Snow spun in the porch light like a swarm. A vehicle door slammed. An engine turned over. Ethan saw taillights blur into white. He didn't chase blindly. He stood for 2 seconds, only 2, and read the ground. Fresh tire tracks, shallow but clear. A smear where Hannah's boot had scraped. And something else, a set of prints that came from the street, not the yard. They had been watching from outside before they entered. Scout's nose dropped, breathing in the story. the snow tried to bury. Ethan's heart beat slow and hard. Not panic, not rage, clarity. He had come here to disappear. That life was gone now, driven away in a car, with a woman who had already been left to die once. Ethan went back inside long enough to grab Hannah's phone from the floor near the hallway. It must have slipped during the struggle. The screen was still lit. A message preview sat at the top. Mike Dorsey. Bring the proof. Come alone. Waterfront site. Hurry. Ethan stared at the words until they sharpened into something colder. He wasn't just a contact. He was a door that had opened for the wrong people. Ethan tucked the phone into his parka, zipped up, and looked down at Scout. Scout's eyes met his, amber and unwavering. Ethan didn't need to say much. Find her, he whispered. Scout didn't bark again. He just started forward into the storm, and Ethan followed, boots biting into snow, flannel warm under his parka, his left knee screaming, his mind quiet and steady. Somewhere out by the waterfront, Hannah was being treated like a problem, and Ethan was done letting winter finish other people's work. The storm swallowed the waterfront in a white roar. Snow erased distance, softened edges, and turned every light into a trembling halo. Somewhere beyond the wind, metal groaned and chains clinked like the city was grinding its teeth. Ethan followed Scout into it anyway. His navy winter parka snapped in the gusts. The red and black flannel beneath clung warm to his chest, damp at the collar from his breath. Faded jeans, brown leather boots digging for traction. Every step lit a flare of pain through his left knee, but he kept moving because stopping had never been an option. He respected. Scout ran low and steady, black and tan coat dusted white. The harness stayed snug, the patch stark against the storm. Service dog, do not pet. Scout didn't bark. Scout didn't waste energy. He tracked nose down, ears slicing through wind, body reading scent where sight failed. Ethan kept Hannah's phone in his pocket, the message from Mike Dorsey burning like a coal. Bring the proof. Come alone. Waterfront site. Hurry. He didn't come alone. He came with a dog who saw truth in the air and a silence in his own chest that meant his mind was clear. The waterfront construction site rose out of the snow like a half-built skeleton. Steel beams, stacked pallets, orange barriers already buried up to their knees. A chain-link fence bowed inward where wind had leaned on it for days. Scout stopped at the fence and lifted his head. Not fear, confirmation. Ethan climbed through a gap where the fence had been cut clean, not torn. Someone had planned this. He felt the old part of him wake up fully, the part trained to move without drama, to keep breathing steady while the world tried to make it impossible. A floodlight flicked on somewhere deeper in the site, washing the snow in harsh white. Shadows snapped long across ice and gravel. Ethan Cole, a voice called out. Smooth, familiar now. Trent Maddox stepped into the light, mid-40s, solid build, dark coat neat, gloves clean, hair cut short like discipline was a costume he wore well. His smile was polite enough to belong at a fundraiser, but his eyes stayed cold. Calculating, you didn't come alone, Trent said, looking at Scout. His gaze paused on the harness patch. That dog makes things complicated. Ethan didn't answer. He watched the angles, the blind spots, the places someone could stand behind a beam and think it made them invisible. A second figure emerged from the shadows, shoulders hunched, as if he wanted to disappear inside his own coat. Mike Dorsey, mid-30s, average height, face thin with sleeplessness, stubble on his jaw. His eyes kept darting, blinking too fast, like he was trying to blink away what he had become. He held his hands close to his chest, not because he was cold, but because he was scared of what those hands had helped do. Hannah stood between two steel posts, wrists bound again with plastic ties. Her coat was dusted white. Her face was pale, but her spine stayed straight. Her hazel eyes locked on Ethan the second she saw him, and for a moment, something fierce flashed there. Anger, relief, and a stubborn refusal to break. Scout gave a low, controlled sound, not a bark, a warning. Trent's smile widened. She's alive, he said, as if that was generosity. You should be grateful. We didn't want a mess. Ethan's voice stayed level. Let her go. Trent tilted his head. The proof first. Mike swallowed hard. You were supposed to come alone, he muttered. Not to Ethan, but to himself, like he was reciting lines and forgetting them. Ethan didn't look at Mike. He looked at Hannah. Are you hurt? Hannah's lips trembled once, then steadied. I'm here, she said. It wasn't reassurance. It was information. That was enough. Ethan reached inside his parka slowly, making sure both men could see his hands. He pulled out the waterproof envelope, the copy from the diner. Not the only copy, not the most important copy. The one he could afford to lose. Trent's eyes sharpened. Good, he said. Slide it over. Ethan did. The envelope skidded across the snow and stopped near Trent's boots. Trent crouched to pick it up, confidence loosening his posture for half a second. Half a second was all Ethan ever needed. Scout moved without a sound, body low, cutting the distance like a shadow, not toward Trent's throat, not toward blood. Scout angled for the space that mattered, the line between Hannah and the men holding her. Trent jerked upright. Hey, Ethan stepped forward at the same time. Not charging, not flailing, just closing space with controlled speed. His left knee screamed, but his upper body stayed loose, balanced. He reached Hannah, cut the tie with the same small blade he'd used at the gate. Hands sure even in the wind. Hannah stumbled, and Ethan caught her by the elbow, pulling her behind him. Scout planted himself in front of them, broad chest squared, ears forward, teeth visible now not in frenzy, but in promise. A barrier. Trent swore, stepping back. Grab her. A figure shifted behind a beam, another man, heavier, moving to cut off their path. Ethan saw him and adjusted instantly, angling toward a stack of pallets that gave cover in a root. Mike's voice cracked. Stop. You're making this worse. Ethan finally looked at Mike. There was something almost pitiful in Mike's face, not innocence, just weakness. The kind that tells itself it had no choice until someone stands up and proves that a choice existed. You did, Ethan said, quiet but sharp. You chose. Mike flinched like he'd been struck. Trent's hand went inside his coat. Ethan's body tightened. Scout's growl deepened, still controlled, a warning line drawn in sound. Before Trent could pull anything free, a different set of headlights cut through the blowing snow beyond the fence. Multiple beams swinging wide, purposeful, not searching, arriving. Sirens didn't scream at first. They didn't need to. The lights were enough. The storm swallowed sound, but it couldn't swallow authority. Trent froze. Mike's face collapsed into panic. They weren't supposed to, he started, then stopped, because the lie had nowhere left to stand. Footsteps crunched. Command shouted. The sight filled with movement men in heavy coats with radios, faces stern, eyes sharp. An older man stepped forward, tall and lean, jaw set like stone, eyes that had learned patience, federal energy, controlled, not theatrical. Agent Marcus Reed, he said, voice clear. Step away, hands where I can see them. Trent's gaze flicked between Ethan, Scout, and the approaching agents. Calculation ran across his face like weather. He backed up once, then lifted his hands slowly, deciding in real time which consequences he could survive. Mike raised his hands too, trembling. I can explain, he pleaded. Agent Reed didn't look impressed. Save it for your statement. As cuffs clicked, Hannah's breath finally broke free. She leaned into Ethan for a brief second, forehead touching his shoulder, like she needed to confirm he was real. Ethan steadied her. He didn't wrap her in a dramatic embrace. He simply held her close enough that the wind couldn't take her again. Scout sat at Ethan's left side, harness patch bright under the floodlight. The dog's breathing was even, but his eyes stayed on Trent until Trent was fully escorted away. When the immediate danger passed, Agent Reed approached Ethan, up close. Reed looked early 40s, clean-shaven, eyes alert and unamused. He assessed Ethan the way professionals assessed each other, by posture, control, and the absence of unnecessary motion. You called? Reed asked. Ethan shook his head. I didn't. Hannah lifted her chin. I did, she said, voice hoarse but steady. Before he grabbed me. I sent what I had to the only number I trusted. Her eyes flicked to Reed. I kept one contact off record for this reason. Reed nodded once, as if that explained the timing. Smart. Trent glanced back once as he was led away, hatred sharpening his face. Ethan met that look without flinching. He'd seen worse hatred. He'd lived through it. Hatred didn't scare him. What scared him was the quiet part afterward. When the adrenaline left and a person had to decide what kind of life to build from the wreckage. Days later, the storm eased. The sky lightened. Snow still covered the yard, but the air felt less predatory. Ethan rebuilt the front gate first, not because he cared about fences, because he refused to let that beam remain what it had been. He sanded the wood with slow patience, replaced the cracked section, straightened the post. His left knee ached. His hands split. He worked anyway. Hannah returned when she could, not as a fugitive now, but as someone carrying purpose. Her wrists still bore faint marks. Her gaze still held shadows. But she walked up the drive with her shoulders squared. Scout met her at the threshold and sat, calm, as if saying, "You are allowed here." Hannah looked at the repaired gate, then at Ethan in his navy parka and red and black flannel, boots planted firm in the snow. "You didn't leave," she said softly. Ethan's eyes warmed. "Just a little. I tried leaving," he admitted. "It didn't work." Hannah's mouth twitched. "Good." They stood there for a moment, two people who had been bruised by different storms, and one dog who had refused to let the wind finish its sentence. Ethan didn't promise forever. He didn't speak in big words. He only opened the gate and stepped aside so Hannah could walk through. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a choice. Sometimes a miracle does not arrive with thunder or a perfect answer. Sometimes it shows up as a second chance on the coldest night, when one tired soul refuses to walk away, and a loyal dog stays steady when everything else is shaking. Faith can look small in daily life. It can look like checking on a neighbor. It can look like speaking up when something feels wrong. It can look like holding on one more hour, one more prayer, one more step forward. Even when the road is covered in snow, maybe that is how God works most often, not by erasing the storm, but by placing help in the storm, not by removing the pain, but by giving people the strength to carry it together until healing becomes possible. If this story gave you hope today, please share it with someone who needs it. Leave a comment below and tell us where you are watching from and what season you are walking through right now. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of faith, loyalty, and second chances. May God bless you and your home. May He protect the people you love and guide your steps through every storm.